Good morning and welcome to the Mini Storage Messenger Self-Storage Webinar Series. I'm Poppy Behrens, publisher of Minico Publishing, and we're delighted to have you in the audience today. This is one of several informative webinars planned for self-storage owners, operators, managers, investors, developers, and other industry professionals. The sponsor of today's webinar is Carlsbad, California-based Mako Steel, a company that designs, supplies, and installs steel buildings for the self-storage industry. This includes single-story, multi-story, RV and boat storage, climate-controlled, and custom buildings. Our presenters today are Caesar Wright and Bruce McCardle. Caesar Wright is president of Mako and has been with the company since its inception in 1993. Caesar has contributed many articles to industry magazines over the years on various storage topics with a focus on RV and boat facilities and logistics. He has been in the steel business his entire life and has risen from an entry-level sales position to CEO at a remarkably young age. Caesar is respected in the industry for his ability to manage, negotiate, and succeed without compromising his integrity or his sense of humor. Bruce is Vice President of the Eastern Division Operations for Mako Steel and has worked in the architectural design, development, construction, and metal building manufacturing industry since 1977, with a focus on the self-storage industry for the past 20 years. Bruce is a member of the Florida Self-Storage Association Board of Trustees and has published articles in industry magazines and is a frequent presenter at self-storage industry trade shows and seminars. This year marks the 30th anniversary of Mini Storage Messenger, which provides the self-storage industry with in-depth news and information. Each issue of Messenger offers cover stories and feature articles on the most timely industry topics and trends with monthly columns contributed by industry experts and accomplished business professionals. We also publish a variety of other self-storage data sources, such as those that you see on your screen. For more information, please visit ministoragemessenger.com. We'd invite you to submit questions throughout today's webinar. To do so, simply type your question in the question area and click Send. Depending on the question, we will answer it either privately or to the entire group. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. Those that we cannot answer due to time constraints, however, will be answered by way of email after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on demand from our archives at ministoragemessenger.com. Today's presentation should run about 45 minutes with the remainder of the hour open to questions and answers. And now it's my distinct pleasure to turn the presentation over to Caesar. Good morning, Caesar.
Hey, good morning, Poppy. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Oh, Poppy, thank you for the very nice introduction. And by the way, congratulations on the 30 years of Minico. Very impressive.
Thank you.
On the phone also with us, folks and listeners, good morning or afternoon, depending where you're at. I do have Bruce McCardle. He is my Vice President of my East Coast operations out of Jacksonville, Florida. Good morning, Mr. McCardle.
Good morning, everyone.
Today, folks, what we're going to do is we're going to cram as much information as we can get into you in about 40 or 45 minutes, like Poppy discussed. And we're going to discuss specifically boat and RV storage. As you can see on my slide here, we're going to kind of touch on some facts and figures. I'm also going to discuss the types of boat and RV storage that we're currently seeing out there.
Then we're going to jump into some construction trends and condominialization of storage and take a hard look at land utilization.
Thank you, Bruce. Let's touch on some facts and figures. These are pretty astonishing numbers. We try to get as updated numbers as possible. So what we did come up with here as of late, or the best we could, is the RV ownership has reached record levels. And read with me here. Approximately 8.2 million American households now own an RV. That's a 16% increase since 2001 and a 64% gain since 1980. As you can see, those are pretty astonishing numbers. You'll notice on the bottom right of this slide that we did pull this information. If anybody wants some more information, then some pretty interesting statistics on the RV industry. This RVIA, you could jump on their website. They've got some pretty neat statistics on there. One thing we're not talking about, and we had trouble pulling statistics from, were boat owners and boat registered owners. We did find a number in 2007 that was published that there are 13 million boats registered in the United States. So if you've got 8.2 million RVs and 13 million boats, you've got a lot of vehicles and recreational vehicles and boats that are looking for some storage out there. There's a projection that we're seeing, according to a Dr. Richard Curtin. We do get a lot of information from this website. He works over at the University of Michigan, and he's the director of the consumer surveys. He anticipates that he's going to see about 169,000 RVs shipped or bought, if you will, in 2010, which we all know the economic times that we're in, that will be, at least in his opinion and his research, a 24% increase from the year 2009. He also expects that gains will take place over the next 2 years as this negative financial factor may give way to some improved market conditions.
Let's look at some important shipment history that affects where we're at right now. After 5 consecutive years of record growth, you can see on the bottom of the slide, RV shipments dropped 9.5% in 07. Consumers started to back off on some discretionary spending. The economy started to show some signs of a slowdown. Shipments totaled 353,400, the fourth highest in the past quarter century. 390,500 RVs were shipped in 06, which was the best annual total for the 25 years previous to that. Total RV shipments in 06 were 1.6% higher than 05. In 2004, shipments topped 370,100. Something to keep in mind, I think, is an important factor when you're considering building boat and RV is I think the majority of people that own $750,000, $800,000 RVs aren't as affected by discretionary spending as others might be right now.
No question. That's a good point. And good news for the listeners, we won't be quizzing you on those statistics because that's quite a tongue twister there, Mr. McArdle. This webinar, as Poppy will mention towards the end, it will be archived. And also, folks, if you have interest in it, I could send over my PowerPoint presentation because that's a lot of numbers to take in. I'm going to start my first slide here. As you see, this is a parcel in a facility that's out in Arizona. It's a 17-acre parcel. With that 17 acres, it's a very traditional boat and RV storage enclosed facility. And what I mean by that is they've utilized their property lines to their fullest. As you could see and go around the property line, it's what we call in our industry a fortress style. So they maximized it. They built their back wall right on the PL. The interior buildings range from about 80 foot wide to 100 foot wide. And units also range in as narrow as 14 foot wide to even as wide as 28 foot in this particular facility. The reason why I picked this slide for my first one is that I wanted to show you how kind of a traditional parcel is kind of laid out when you look at some boat and RV storage, specifically enclosed. They've got 340,000 square feet of rentable space in this facility, obviously quite large. It was built in 2 phases. What's a very neat number to look at is they were able to obtain a 46% coverage rate of rentable square footage. That's a very good number when you look at boat and RV storage. Typically, we see that number more towards 35%. Given the fact they were able to build the property line and ran with about 55-foot driveways, that's the square footage they came out with. So again, 46% coverage, very well. And we'll talk a little bit more about coverage later on in the presentation. Same facility, different aerial shot. Look at their proximity. It's a fantastic one. It's got a marina that houses 1,000 boat slips. This particular facility, as you see that arrow pointing down, there's a driveway that runs through a resort there that they have access to a private launch ramp. Kind of the best of both worlds. And in the front, as we look at this side, you see some open dirt area. that is slated for some future condominium build-out at some point in time. So a facility that was constructed total, both phases, in about 30 months, 2.5 years, filled up extremely quickly, even within this marketplace. I think we finished the last building last year, and that is a full facility right now, I think clipping in right about 90 to 95% occupancy. So they've done very well. Now I'm going to discuss on this next slide here kind of what, again, we will be talking about as we move further into the presentation. We will touch on the outside parking. I am going to discuss canopy. We will touch briefly on solar. It's a very hot topic within our industry, and that almost alone is its own webinar, but I will touch on it. We'll also discuss some fully enclosed boat and RV storage, along with another trend within our industry, which is the condominium side. Well, first let's talk about the outdoor parking. I mean, it's relatively quick and easy to talk about. It's obviously the least expensive to build. Typically, when you look at an outdoor facility that's just strictly on gravel or dirt or asphalt, owners will stripe the parking stalls at 60-degree angles, typically 11-foot wide in spacing. I'm going to show you a photo. Here's just a prototypical outdoor parking. I mean, Bruce, in your neck of the woods out there, Bruce is in Florida, like I mentioned earlier, and even in my part of the country, which is the West Coast, not a lot of jurisdictions are going to allow this. It's very exposed. They don't like the look of it. But this one happened to be grandfathered into a neighboring city where I'm out of, which is the city's in San Marcos, California. Bruce,
What we run into,
out in Jacksonville?
What we run into out here, Caesar, is we have a lot of empty space between cities, unlike you guys on the West Coast. And the populated areas and cities and the developed areas, there's restrictions on outside parking. As you get out of town into the counties, you see a lot of RVs and boats parked in various areas, which kind of lends to there's a real market for storage inside of the populated areas.
Absolutely. Well, if you've got a piece of dirt in your city or municipality, will accept this as a use for the parcel. It could be a good way also to kind of test your marketplace. Once you get these folks in, you may find out very quickly, A, if the demand is there, B, if the demand might be there to either put a canopy over these things or maybe taking a look at the parcel and do fully enclosed storage. Speaking of canopy, we'll touch on canopy storage here. Typically, when we build canopy storage, you know, you've got spaces that are going to have a 14-foot clear height. The reason why the 14-foot clear height is there is that there's a legal height for a recreational vehicle on the road today in the United States, which is 13 foot 8 inches. So no RV or boat, if it's got a tower on it, if you will, is able to exceed the height legally of 13 foot 8 inches. So a 14-foot clear height when you do canopy storage will accommodate any legal boat or RV on the road today. Kind of like the open storage, the spaces are striped on a 60-degree angle. The post spacing typically is 24 foot on center. I'll show you what I mean by that by a photo here in the next slide. When you turn these parking spaces at a 60-degree angle, you're able to narrow up your drive aisle width quite a bit. Typically, when we do some layout work, we do about a 32-foot drive aisle. I put the word debated in parentheses because everybody does have an opinion on what the drive aisle space should be, and it's certainly something you should not take lightly. It's very important to give proper access to your clients so they can maneuver in and out of the facility without possibly hitting anything in their way. We'll talk about the addition of solar also. Here's a very standard photo of a canopy. As you could see by the framing there and the size and height of the RV, not many RVs get up towards that 13-foot tall range. That one RV, it's going to be the first one you're looking at, not the trailer, the actual motor home there. That's about an 11-foot tall motor home. plenty of clearance to get in underneath this canopy. So that's so height is not an issue, obviously, when you're 14 foot.
I think it's important to point out there too, Caesar, how we set those columns back 5 feet from the wall. If you go with the more standard rigid frame structure or standard steel construction, those columns will be out at that sidewall location. With the angle parking especially, it's great to set those back 5 feet. It just gives you that much more room to manipulate the vehicle in. So.
Absolutely. Pretty standard for columns, definitely within our design to recess them back a good 5 to 7 feet, no question. Bruce, we'll touch on solar just briefly because, again, it is a topic within itself. What I'm showing you folks here on this slide is basically a laminate that is now being applied over certain panels within the industry. It's relatively new in storage. It's been used residential-wise for many years, to be quite honest with you. But people are finding that solar and utilizing solar on a boat and RV storage facility or just a conventional self-storage may have some very, very nice advantages, not only tax-wise. You may be able to sell back energy that you're creating from your facility. You may be able to bank it and use it for future. So, again, that sure varies state to state, and I know there's a certain amount of restrictions out here in California on it, but a topic within itself, but one that I think when you're looking at boat and RV storage and you're discussing a possible project with either an architect or joint venture partners, knowing solar and how it could be used within the project, I think it's important, and you should educate yourself on it. So we are starting to see a lot more of this within our industry. The photo I'm showing you now is going to be of a facility that's up in Northern California. This is a conventional, what I mean by conventional self-storage building. It's your basic 9'6" tall building. He elected to put solar on his rooftops a little bit more of the traditional way. There's some subframing, as you could see, underneath these solar panels that are mounted to the roof panel itself, and then the solar panels placed on that I'm going to call them subgirts, if you will. And then it's a very traditional style of utilizing solar panels within the industry.
I would just touch, it's always a recommendation to, if you're anticipating using solar, to get your architect engineer involved early on the front end with the process and get your metal building supplier involved. What we see, where we see some problems crop up when that's trying to be integrated later, is that metal roofs are great. They're maintenance-free. Once they're down, they're down. Leak problems are easy to find and fix up front. What you see here with this roof attachment is a little less than what you'd see with a standard solar type roof system. If you go with a rack system and realize that every place there's a leg, there has to be a connection to a roof structure, which means there has to be another hole in your roof. The more you can minimize those penetrations and coordinate that on the front end, the better. But when you get into areas in the south, southeast, up and down the coast where there are wind load requirements, you have to remember that those connections also have to be engineered and attached to withstand that wind load.
That's a good point, Bruce. This gentleman that this facility we did up in Northern California, I had asked him what he expected or what his anticipated return on investment would be utilizing the solar. Now, he also runs his shop out of this. He's a tile man. As you actually notice on this end wall, there's some tile, which is it's kind of a neat feature, one that we don't see too often applied to the exterior of our buildings, but that happens to be his trade. He had anticipated, if all goes well, that he's going to see about a 7-year return on investment with utilizing solar panels on his project. And he also lives on site, so he does have a residence that we're not able to see in this photo. So he has a residence, his workshop, and of course the manager's actual office itself. And he feels in 7 years his return on investment should take place. As we move on, we will discuss the following bullet points on fully enclosed storage. We'll discuss the 16-foot building heights. I'll show you a couple photos here in the next few slides. We do look at some possible lower eave heights for just specifically boat storage. This day and age, everybody is looking to try to build as economical as possible. We'll touch on how you don't need maybe quite that 16-foot eave height for a building for boat storage. Typically what you're doing is when you do a 16-foot height, you're allowing a 14-foot clear roll-up door, which what we talked about earlier will accommodate anything legally on the road today. The standard bay width in some boat and RV storage when it's fully enclosed is a 14-foot bay. We've seen that number grow a little bit through the years. Bruce, I think you could remember back when. You've been doing this 30-plus years now. When we were first doing boat and RV storage, we were all using 10-foot, 8-inch wide bays and squeezing a 10-foot door in there. Now the standard has kind of gone to a 14-foot wide bay, maximizing that opening with a 12-foot wide door.
Much more comfortable to manipulate.
No question. I mean, again, I'll touch on that. You know, legal street width, we touched on height, but the legal street width on the roads today, that number's 8 foot 6 inches. So you can't be any wider on the road than 8 foot 6. When you look at your drive aisles, which is between your buildings, when you have a fully enclosed storage, I recommend a 55-foot drive aisle space when you're turning in at a 90-degree angle. I've seen them as narrow as 50. I've seen them as high as 75. So I put debated there just because a lot of people have certain opinions on that. My opinion, 55-foot is an acceptable dimension. What you're looking at here is basically a dead-on shot of a very standard bay. You've got a 14-foot wide bay. That door opening is 12-foot wide. The height, which you see under the unit number 82, is 14-foot clear. As you can see, that RV, even if it were to pull forward to us, with its satellite probably up in place, if he's got one on this one, it probably would still clear that opening as far as the height is concerned. You'll notice the mirrors on each side of the RV. Again, you've got a 12-foot wide door. When I mentioned earlier that lane width is 8 foot 6, that's not with obstacles protruding from the vehicle. If I took a tape measure, which I did not do on this one, but I'm going to guesstimate, and I think I'll be pretty close. If I went from edge of mirror to edge of mirror, that number's going to most likely be just about over 10 feet. So again, he's got a camera in the back of this one, this fella does, and most of these RVs of this nature do. So when he's backing into that unit, he's got to be pretty cognizant of that opening there. So again, showing you kind of a very standard unit within the industry. Bruce, I want to touch on the condominium side of the storage also.
You bet.
As you know, and we've discussed, you know, you're still sticking with that 16-foot building eave height. You know, your unit widths now begin to vary quite a bit more. And what I mean by that, I mentioned in a for-rent facility, a very standard unit width is 14 foot. When you do a for-sale facility, as I call them, you know, the condominium style, owners sure like the flexibility of maybe giving these guys some bigger units. We've found that some folks like these 18-foot wide units, 20-foot wide units. They may have a swing door next to the roll-up door for accessibility. Again, I've said this before, and I stand by it, and hopefully people don't take offense to it, but people with these big toys typically got big wallets to boot, and they will pay for these amenities. And it's been proven with what I've seen out there and owners that we have worked for specifically, that these bigger units are very popular within the condominium side of storage. Again, you got a 14-foot clear roll-up door, and we talked about the drive aisle. I ranged it from 55 to 75. I'll explain that a little bit more, and we're going to show you a photo of a project that has a 71-foot drive aisle. But again, allowing these folks proper areas to maneuver their rig around is very important, and it should not go underestimated. Don't you agree, Bruce?
Yes, it's very important when you start going through the statistics, which you'll probably touch on. It's the number one asked for amenity is wider aisles.
No question. No question. I think if you polled your clients at a for-rent facility or a for-sale facility, one thing that comes up most frequently, like you mentioned, Bruce, would be easier maneuverability around the facility, which consists of wider drive aisles. On those trends, I kind of touched on it earlier. I'll hit it real quick again because these are the four most common sizes we're seeing: 14, 18, 24, and 28. When you look at the condo side of the storage, sectional doors seem to be popular. Climate controlling is a question often asked. Most units will have individual electric and be individually metered. Again, wider drive aisles. We're beating that one down, but it's an important one. I'm going to show you a couple photos of how you finish out of the unit. Individual door alarms are just about a given. Other amenities within the facility, be it the wash bay, the dump station. I'm going to show you a photo of a clubhouse here on my next slide. Restrooms have become very popular, pending the location of your facility. If somebody's there at a, if they're washing down their rig and they want to kind of either restrooms with showers to clean up and before they leave the facility, that's become a very popular amenity within the boat and RV storage facilities. This next slide that you're going to see is a front picture under construction, which is wood construction, which you won't hear this often, but which we suggest you build your clubhouse out of, even though we're metal guys. There's a tremendous amount more flexibility with what you can do with the wood once it's in the field. When we cut our steel, that steel's cut, and it's cut to fit in place. With wood, as you can see, a lot of this timber, they'll make transitions and field modifications as they go on during construction. This project's for those of you that have ever looked up boat and RV condo storage on the internet or Googled that. This job is called, or project now is called Eucalyptus at Beaumont. Ted Dietz is the owner-operator of this project, and it's a facility that's got quite a bit of play in our industry. This is an in-construction photo of his clubhouse. We're going to show you what it looked like afterwards. Pretty neat transition there. So again, he's got a huge entryway where you're going to be able to pull in. I want to flip back one more time because that's kind of neat there. All wood under construction, and then your finished product here. Ted did some really neat things architecturally out there to really enhance the project and really give it a nice curb appeal look. It's a very good looking project, and hopefully it will be a successful one for Ted. I'm going to show you a couple more.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I think, there's a lot of people in a lot of different areas look at that clubhouse and say, wow, why spend that money on a clubhouse for a boat and RV facility? And as Caesar, as we may or may not have time to get into, the two types of facilities being a destination or a drop-off, these guys have created kind of a spot to go to. I'm working with a gentleman in Florida who's a retired pilot who talks about pilots going to the airport, these little airports on weekends, not to fly, just to talk about planes and have coffee with each other, et cetera. He said RV people are about the same. It becomes a club atmosphere. People go there just to hang out. Caesar shows you some of these finished units. Some of them are finished out incredibly. Those of you in the West Coast may not be familiar with the term, but in the South and Southeast, you're familiar with what's called a gentleman's ranch, which is a plot of land out in the woods with a shack on it. It's the hunting ranch or the gentleman's ranch where guys go and hang out on weekend, maybe have a couple adult beverages, just a place to go to get away. And interestingly enough, some of these nicer RV clubhouses and facilities have become that. Gee, hon, I'm going to go work on the RV. You're not, but you're going to the RV place. So it becomes kind of a place to go.
Absolutely. No, it's well said. Again, what we're seeing more folks that are looking at the condo side of these, building these clubhouses. They're putting, wireless internet accessibility in them. This specific one I've been in, Ted's. It's got satellite TV that's accessible to every owner there. It's got a refrigerator. It's got restrooms. So it is a place where you can commingle with other folks, no question. Some of the amenities that Ted put into his facility, as we've kind of highlighted here, it's not always a given, but almost always a given that fire sprinklers are going to be inside every unit and go through these buildings. Again, your fire department's going to dictate that, but you know, I could pretty safely say 7 out of 10 facilities that we've been involved with, construction-wise, design-wise, have had sprinklers run through them. Ted did do a 30-amp RV hookup within each unit. Again, we're showing the 14-foot clear height door. Those are automatic sectional doors, so they are controlled and operated by remote control. And, of course, security cameras is a security feature there. A lot of these folks, if they've got a pretty high-priced rig in there, they want to make sure they're storing it or buying a unit that is very well secured. The next photo as we go on here is one of just a different size unit. This one's a little bit wider, a little less deep, if you will. This unit is about 18 by 25. This, Bruce, is this unit's been kind of labeled a man cave, if you will. It's kind of triggered maybe to some folks that may be the car hobbyists, motorcycle guys. I mean, an RV's really not going to fit in this thing as far as the depth of it. As you can see, it's certainly wide enough, but the depth of it is not much more than 25 feet. So you're kind of looking for the antique car collector or the motorcyclist that may have a few toys or a small jet ski trailer, if you will. So we're seeing that a very popular size also, no question. Do you see that out there, Bruce?
You're seeing it become more and more popular, Caesar. And I hope, again, not to offend anybody, but being as close to Daytona as we are, Daytona Bike Week, we see a lot of people from all over the country that bring their big motorcycles down in a trailer and then ride it around when they get down there. And we're seeing more and more of storage facilities that are catering to those type of toys too. So.
This unit here is one that was an early unit over at Eucalyptus at Beaumont that Ted went ahead and epoxied the floor here, kind of used it as a showroom unit. Hard to see in this photo. Don't know how well you all could see it on your computer. There is a ceiling fan up there. You can see a 4-foot fluorescent strip light on the right-hand partition wall. Again, the floor is epoxied. He's got some cabinets that were placed in the back, just kind of showing some folks initially what a very standard unit would be. This is a very standard unit, meaning 14-foot wide, about 45-foot deep. And you do see on the left hand of the photo the panel there for your electric hookup. So that's a 30-amp panel for electrical hookup there. We talked about some varying widths of these buildings. Different facility here, but showing you the width of a 24-foot clear span unit. This unit actually has, which you can't see very well because we're inside the unit as we take the photo, but it has got just a 12-foot door in this thing. It's just wide open right now completely because we're inside it. But you can see the fire lines going through it, a couple 4-foot fluorescent strip lights on each wall there. Just kind of showing you how big that 24-foot wide unit is. Again, a very popular unit size, size that folks, if they're doing a layout on their buildings, if they can get a few of those in, it does give some flexibility to the possible client as far as how much stuff they could put in that unit. I'll show you here what we're looking at is a unit that's 14-foot wide. It's 100 foot in depth. That's the actual building width. This actually originally were these units. There were 2 units. As you can see, it's a pull-through. So you have doors on each side of the building. We did at one point have a wall in there, but this particular renter wanted to rent the entire unit so he could just drive through the unit. Very easy accessibility, just pull in, pull out. So, again, he's got some more toys than what you're seeing than just that wakeboard boat. But again, you do have the flexibility within the metal design to pull what we call the longitudinal wall out so you then have a pull-through unit. As we move on to the next slide, again, I'm kind of loading you up with photos here because I think photos do tell a lot, and they're easier when we do these presentations to kind of explain how these facilities work as far as what your standards are and so forth. This aisle, drive aisle you see, I'm back to Eucalyptus at Beaumont. It's a 71-foot drive aisle, which is tremendously wide. Ted did have the ability and was adamant on doing a 71-foot drive aisle for reasons we discussed earlier. He kind of polled his potential clientele, and they were coming up with wider drive aisles is what they wanted the most. This RV you're looking at, she's a big one. She's 40 feet. This is about a $600,000 rig. As you can see, he's going to maneuver in and out of this facility quite easily. He's not the normal. You know, your average RV sold in this marketplace right now is about a 28-foot RV. That's a statistic that we pulled, and you know, this is a big RV right here. But as you can see, what I'm trying to show you is how maneuverable this thing could be with a 71-foot drive aisle. So very helpful for as far as the landowner / tenant of these units when he can move around. Bruce, you want to touch a little bit on the land utilization?
And yes, and before this, just a couple things on the amenities, not only on the condos, but on a facility as a whole. There's some things that I found out just last year that I found very interesting as people began to research, and Ted Dietz, that Caesar mentioned, did a lot of research and a lot of surveys with boat and RV owners. A question that always comes up is the dump station. It's an expensive item. There's some environmental issues. What the survey of owners showed was that that's not something they look for particularly. That's not high on their list of requirements at a facility. RV owners like to get rid of that weight and get rid of that waste where they are staying, lock the bathroom door, keep the kids out, and drive back empty. Another question that comes up a lot is wash bays as being popular. Again, yes, it is something that can be useful and popular, but in most parts of the country right now, you need to look into the environmental considerations. It can be an expensive item with the water reclaim and reuse and the runoff requirements. And also I understand they're a bit of a maintenance issue, but those are a couple of the amenities that we get a lot of questions on. As far as land utilization, something you see in the South, Southeast, especially in Florida, is people will come in and want to build some regular storage and have some boat and RV storage because the market is definitely here. When they start looking at the land that it takes to build boat and RV units and the return per square foot on that versus the land used to build regular units and the return per square foot on that, they build mostly regular storage. So there's still a pent-up market here for boat and RV, especially in the areas where land cost is a consideration. What a good rule of thumb, per acre, you're going to hit about 35 to 40% land utilization, and that's with 90-degree parking and 50 to 55-foot drives. Is that about what you see out there, Caesar?
It's pretty much dead on.
Okay.
You know, again, it's about right on the money. I mean, it sure depends on how your parcel is configured, but we're going to go into a couple layouts in the next slides, and which are kind of mixed with some conventional storage along with boat and RV storage. But if you're factoring in and you're looking at a parcel, and you might be doing some due diligence if you want to put this parcel in escrow and maybe think about building boat and RV storage, as a rule of thumb, I think you should take into consideration the 35 to 40% coverage of rentable square foot on a per acre basis, correct. We'll touch on the cost, Bruce, towards the end. We got a couple layouts here I wanted to get to because I know as I look at the clock we're already 20 till. So I do want to save a good 10 minutes for some Q&A. This is a little tough to see, and again, folks and listeners, I'd mention that, you know, I'm more than willing to launch this PowerPoint out to whomever wants to take a look at it so they could kind of zoom in, zoom out so you could see it. This is a project that was completed on our end, it's showing 47% coverage. I've got a lot size of 206,000 square feet, which is just at 4.73 acres. Rentable square footage, 96,170. As you look at this, we like this layout. I like this layout, and of course this depends on where you're going to be placing your project and what the demand is for storage within that area. That's always the million-dollar question. But what this layout is right here is on the far right, you'll see 14 by 30 units. If you can't read them, they are 14 by 30. We then go in with a 50-foot drive aisle and do an 80-foot wide building, which is a very common building width in boat and RV storage, because you do have the flexibility of moving these center longitudinal walls. And then we kind of kicked our drive aisle up, as you'll notice, 10 feet, because now all of a sudden I'm in between two buildings that are 40-foot deep units. So we did 60 feet in between these drive aisles. If you look at the bottom, if you had a north indicating arrow as up, the south side, those units are also 14 by 30, and we made that drive aisle a little tight. Since they're only 30 foot in depth, that drive aisle actually is 35 feet with 30-foot deep units. Maybe used more for some trailers, if you will, smaller jet ski trailers. And then kind of wrapped around the perimeter, and even had a little spot there as this parcel dog legs to do some conventional storage with some 10-foot wide units. So again, kind of showing just an idea and some thought on many things go into a layout when you start to prepare one. We've seen and done so many of them that when you get your requirements from your building department or municipality, it starts giving you the direction you need to go when you're laying out. Do you see a lot of mixed use out there, Bruce, as we do out here?
We do, and a couple of my developers think it's a great idea, especially if you have some open parking or some canopy parking, to have some regular storage available for GPS, electronics, fish finders, different things that you just don't want to leave under a canopy or out in the open. Even beach furniture, beach balls and junk, get it out of the RV and throw it into a unit is a pretty popular idea. Absolutely.
This last layout we'll take a look at. Again, this one is a project that we have designed. It's on 7.62 acres, rentable square footage, 129,000 square feet. Bruce, we touched on that 35 to 40% coverage. Well, here's a perfect example. It's 39%. You'll notice as we go up this, to the dog leg right, if you will, of this building where the dimension of 251 foot 9.5 inches is, there's a little area there that's got some small storage. We kind of saw some dead space right there. This owner thought it might be neat to put some motorcycle storage right there. Folks that own motorcycles could store in there. This would be classified as a for-sale facility. This here is designed and intends to be a condo facility. So again, showing you about 39% coverage there when you're turning in at 90 degrees. I'm going to kind of breeze through this construction cost because it's loaded. It's something I don't like to touch on without seeing much of a facility, but everybody asks when we do these things. We've done 6 or 7 of these webinars, so I thought it'd be a good idea at least to touch on some cost, at least on our scope of work. And these are general costs as far as industry standards. When you look at a canopy, if you're trying to plug some numbers, we use a very rough plug number for the structures themselves of about $5 to $6 a square foot. When you get into the boat and RV storage buildings, well, it's a little bit different animal. I'm going to throw the number, which we use consistently, of about $9 to $10 a square foot. Now, that's not an overall construction cost. I don't want to confuse anybody by saying that number. That's the construction cost of kind of the photos that I showed you of what the metal structures would be. That would be from slab up. So, of course, that doesn't take into consideration electrical, concrete, sprinklers, things of that nature. Just giving you a general idea of some construction cost of what we and others in our industry would be providing when it comes to the storage buildings. I'll give you some very rough overall construction costs since we're on the topic. I don't think it's unfair to say, and there's many, these are numbers that certainly can't be held to because there's many factors, but I do know some folks that have recently run numbers on an overall construction cost of a boat and RV storage facility, and we've seen those numbers tick under $35 a square foot. And what that includes is basically, in essence, all your hard cost. So most likely your soft cost of dirt is not inclusive to that number, nor would your permit fees or any off-site work that may need to be done. That $35 a square foot may include all of your hard costs from pouring slabs to doing electrical to putting in your security, doing the gates, and so on, along with the buildings and doors. Rough costs, just wanted to give you all a feel for at least what numbers we've been seeing out there from developers / general contractors, and of course that number could vary, but don't put it as Bible, but it's one that we've heard here as of late.
Caesar, I'd like to add for any attendees we may have from the south or southeast in the high wind load areas, canopies can get expensive. You can imagine a canopy in 140 mile per hour wind load. Of course, the steel structure gets much heavier, the bracing gets heavier, but the concrete to hold that down can become substantial. In some cases, it's almost less expensive to build an enclosed boat and RV than it is just to put a canopy in a high wind load area. In the enclosed area, not only is your in the enclosed storage, not only is your building going to be somewhat more expensive, but you're going to be required to use a wind-rated door, and those doors are, I'd say, easily 70 to 80% more expensive than a regular door in a non-high wind area. So if you get into a wind area, it's better to call and talk with someone about the cost of steel and doors and erection rather than just using some of the numbers that are kicked around at trade shows. So.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And again, those folks, depending on the listeners, there are general contractors out there that have kind of niched into this storage industry that have become very helpful when budgeting projects from inception to construction. So good points, Bruce. Poppy, on our end, I don't know if you've got some questions that came in, but I noticed we're sitting almost right at 10 till, so
I do have
we'd like
some
to
questions.
save at least 5 or 10 minutes to answer some questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's get started. We have quite a few to go through. First one is, for those of us in the northern climates, do you have figures on ATVs, snowmobiles, classic cars, or motorcycle storage opportunities?
I assume by figures they mean statistics as far as what they're doing in reference to sales and so forth. I'm making that assumption. Does that sound correct? How you read that question, Poppy?
I would look at it that way, and then maybe you might just touch on what opportunities there might be for those types of storage in those climates.
If that person is still listening, hopefully they are. If they could shoot an email to that info@Maaco Steel, I'll get them for them. We pulled a couple sites. I don't have them readily available to sound off, but we pulled several sites when doing the research for the webinar. So if that listener who asked that question wouldn't mind sending that question to us at info@Maaco Steel, I will find those statistics for them.
Perfect. Next question. When selecting a site for boat and RV storage, what is the average parcel size?
Bruce, we could both touch on this because your area may differ than mine. Great question, by the way. Typically, when we are talking to folks that are out there looking for dirt, that question comes up very often. 5 acres is a number that gets spouted out fairly quickly. Heck, we just did one, though, where we did a layout on 3 acres because he feels like he's got a great spot for it and could get good returns. As you've seen in the slides earlier, heck, that one was 17 acres. But I hear a trigger number, and I'm curious to hear Bruce's trigger number on the East Coast and Southeast. I hear a number of about 5 acres, Poppy.
Okay, great.
Bruce, real quick, Bruce, what do you?
That's the same number that we hear out here, the 5 acres. And again, you have to take into consideration several of the consultants in the business that do demographics and feasibility as a general number throw out that 5 acres. But like Caesar's saying, if you're in Lubbock, Texas, you can build a facility that's going to pay for itself and make money on maybe 3 acres, whereas some other areas it's going to take a lot more to make a project work. So.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. I have several people who have asked if the presentation will be archived with sound. Yes, it will, and we'll give you that information at the end of the webinar. Next question, do you have any statistics related to Canada as far as RV and boat ownership, sales, and shipments?
Again, I'm gonna go back to my original response to the question that we talked about earlier. If that same listener could shoot me an email, let me see what I could dig up. The answer is no, I did not do any Canadian. I focused here in the U.S., but I know I could find it. So if that person could also email that question to us, we'll do the best we can to try to locate it and get some info to them.
Okay. Next question is, are there any special requirements as far as fire protection code, or will this just be site-specific?
Bruce, do you want to touch on that, Bruce? I certainly can.
Yeah, I'm going to say in my part of the world and in most of the Midwest, Northeast, it is very site-specific. We get into a lot of areas where the fire marshal is kind of the czar. He runs things. Code can say one thing, but the local fire marshal can override that in a hurry. So you can see anything from what we looked at, every unit sprinkled, where you need to be careful, and it gets into your architect or engineer getting the right occupancy rating on your building, is when you start seeing a requirement for firewalls. A lot of times they'll have given your building the wrong occupancy rating. They're giving it the rating of a building that's going to be retail or office. You need to work with them to get that back down to a storage type facility. But bottom line is that can be very site specific. And the fire marshal, their office is always glad to sit down and start looking at some preliminary plans with you and say you're going to need to do this, this, and this. So a very important cost consideration.
Very much so. And the type 2N construction is kind of what you see in storage is what it's labeled as. With the metal roof, it is classified as non-combustible. So, for example, if you're not doing boat and RV storage, you may have a building that could be 40 foot wide and 500 foot long, which is 20,000 square feet, where instead, and if it's just exterior access, you may be able to put an area separation wall utilizing steel studs and drywall with, say, a 1 or 2 hour rating. Where it changes a little bit into vehicle storage is now you've got the vehicle in there that's most likely got gasoline in it. And I mentioned earlier in the webinar when we, given our history with boat and RV storage, I would confidently say 7 out of 10 facilities that we've done, if not even 8 out of 10, you can almost assume are going to have sprinklers. But again, there's always that rare occasion.
Yeah, and I think you can count on sprinklers. The firewalls are an issue, and you check with your insurance too. Even if you get an area where the requirements aren't stringent, sometimes you can save some insurance money by adding a little more. So.
Okay, next question is, are you seeing wider bays becoming more of a standard for boat and RV storage?
Definitely. I think so. I mean, Poppy, again, when it's a question we're asked a lot, especially when we're laying out a facility. When we look at a building, and I'll use some numbers just as an example, a very common width building in RV storage and boat storage is an 80 foot wide building. If you've got, let's just say, 20 bays that are each 14 foot in width, that means you're looking at a building that's 80 foot wide and 280 foot long. When you're doing a for-rent facility, then my thought, or at least my opinion, would be to stay at 14-foot bays, because you're then going to get more units in there. On a for-sale facility, then you might want to become a little bit more flexible with your units, because you are marketing and trying to reach out to a possible different user or owner than you are as the renter. But to answer that question, in a for-rent facility, the 14-foot bay is the most common. We still do see folks go ahead and put some 16 and 18-foot bays in there.
Okay, another question, is condo storage more strict in regards to fire codes?
Bruce, I mean, I've not seen any different requirements strictly because it's condominium storage as opposed to a for-rent facility.
I have not either.
Is not that I know of.
No, I have not seen any different requirements as far as fire is concerned. I think I see what they're thinking, Caesar, is you're selling an individual unit versus renting a space in a building, but I have not seen that affect the fire codes.
Nor have I.
Okay. You indicated a standard RV depth of 45 feet and a height of 16 feet. What is the standard boat depth and height?
You know, I appreciate somebody asking that because I was going to touch on that. I would say what we see most common would be, again, we're going to keep that 14-foot bay width because it's going to accommodate the 12-foot door. As far as the depth of the unit, 30 to 35 feet, so it's a little shallower, if you will. I feel the height could drop from a 16-foot eave height. You could drop that height to a 12-foot eave height with a 10-foot high roll-up door. So to summarize that, because that was a mouthful, 14 by 35 unit with a 12 by 10 door, 12 wide, 10 high. I like the 12-foot wide door because it gives that client, again, enough space to maneuver inside the unit. A trailer is much harder to deal with, Poppy, as you probably know, to back up than an RV is.
Oh, yes.
I would say that's where it's a real key to do a lot of market research. And again, as we mentioned, there's a lot of consultants in the industry who will do demographics and studies in your area for sizes and best unit sizes and rent. But I've seen mistakes made in somebody building a lot of smaller units because, boy, the numbers look good on the front end as far as return per square foot. But then they're in an area where they needed units for bigger vehicles. And the other way around, I've seen some people build too big units and end up renting it for a vehicle that's half the size and reducing the rent just because it's available. So do some homework.
Doing your due diligence is definitely of the utmost importance for certain.
Okay. Are most facilities equipped with a dump station and wash bay?
You know, Bruce, you touched on that a little bit, and I agree with what you said, and the answer is yes. We're probably seeing a little less of the wash bay than we are of the dump station right now. I think, though I do agree with what Bruce had said, most folks, when they do leave a destination, they like to travel light and usually lock that bathroom door when they're coming home and then stop to use the restroom. But a dump station is still convenient to have it at your location. The wash bay, there are some environmental issues you're getting into with water runoff. So pending your area, that needs to be looked at, and an architect is usually a good outlet to get some information from. But I would say more dump stations, less wash bays from what I'm seeing.
Okay. We have time for one more question here. Is it possible to do climate-controlled boat and RV storage units?
It is. It's not the most economical way to build them, but when you're doing those, typically those are going to be in the condos. You could come in with an insulated roll-up door / sectional door. You come in with R19 roof insulation, which is 6-inch thickness. You also insulate in between the walls of each dividing unit. So yes, it is possible, and then you have to consider your mechanical equipment, which is an X factor, depending where you're located within the country. Yes, it's possible. Surprisingly, don't see that much of it. A lot of inquiries. The inquiries seem to be tuned out when they see cost, to be quite honest with you.
I think there's some alternatives too, Caesar. If you get at a very harsh environment, say up in the north, where you're worried about things freezing, you know, I see some in-slab type heating elements. It doesn't have to be a unit that's going to control it to the temperature that's comfortable in our house or in our office. It'll keep it from freezing in harsh temperatures where it's hot or humid like it is down here. Some humidity relief is more important than maybe actual air conditioning is.
Bruce, you mentioned the northern states. I have one other question here that maybe we can answer quickly. Your pictures showed flat roofs. Do northern states require steeper pitched roofs?
Definitely recommended the steeper pitch roofs and the higher snow and ice areas, roof jacks, and we really in this industry have no standard buildings. Each project is pretty much custom designed as it comes in, and a good company is going to take those factors into consideration when they put that design together.
Good. Wonderful. Well, we'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. We hope we provided some useful information about RV and boat storage for you. For more information about Mako Steel, you may call 800-383-4932, or you can email. I have webinar at makosteel.com. Caesar, is
yeah,
that
one
still?
works too, Poppy.
Okay.
I just went back to the slide at info@makosteels works also.
Okay, perfect. Or you can email the email address on your screen. You can also visit their website at makosteel.com. Just as a reminder, within the next few days, you will be receiving an email with a link to the archived presentation as well as a special offer for our RV and Boat Mega Resource Kit. So make sure you watch your inbox for this email. Our next webinar is scheduled for October 7th. The topic is Making Solar Work for You, and it's sponsored by DC Taylor Company. To sign up for this webinar or any of our other upcoming webinars, please visit our website at ministoragemessenger.com. Thank you to Caesar and Bruce, and thank you to all of our attendees. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Poppy, thank you.
Poppy, thanks for
You're
the
welcome.
listeners.